it also helps when you go to masterminds or you go to events and you hear somebody's story up on stage and you like the guy, you care about the guy, but you're like, this guy's a total idiot. If he can do it, I can do it. And you just start believing.
What gave you that confidence when you were like, you know what, I do have something that they don't have? Because sometimes, and you've met people where it stops you dead in your tracks, or it stops people in your tracks. Maybe some of those people, family members, whatever, that you look at and like, no, I don't want to do that. What was it that triggered you to go, no, I'm still going to push forward?
I think it was this feeling of looking back at where I had started and where I could have ended up if I would have stayed on that same path. Growing up in a pretty rough household environment and learning a lot from those parental figures, but also learning like, whoa, I don't want to bring this into my life. And some of that blue collar mentality, you grow up pretty rough and tumble, bikers type gang people, where you're like, wow, this is like a whole nother world. And then you get out of that and you start seeing yourself in a different light. And I started breaking away from, the hardcore partiers and the escapism and all of that. And I just made a decision at some point where I was like, I am not going to be that person, and I'm going to prove it to myself and everyone else. And that was the chip on my shoulder that got me through some really hard times and to continue to break through. And then you get to the other side and you actually have to totally change what drives you. And so for me, it was like that thing that drove me was great, but it wasn't going to allow me to be able to live a good life or a fulfilled life if I didn't let go of that. So I spent, the next phase of life learning to let go of that and connecting to a greater purpose and spirit and all these other things. And I'm still on that path. Yeah. But because of that, it kind of allowed me to kind of make the next step. And then, it also helps when you go to masterminds or you go to events and you hear somebody's story up on stage and you like the guy, you care about the guy, but you're like, this guy's a total idiot. If he can do it, I can do it. And you just start believing.
No, it's true, right? Because first of all, that chip gets real heavy, right? Even though it might help you get through, there's a point to where you're like, wow, this isn't really serving me anymore. But I laugh probably too hard at that comment because the group will be unnamed, but I remember being in an event, networking group, sitting around, and I'm not joking when I say at least 60% of them, the people in that room, who were incredibly successful, easily, most of the, I will say, multimillionaires, billionaires in some case, that would sit there and talk about their addictions or their third or fourth marriages or all this stuff. And I remember having that moment of like, geez, if these guys can build these amazing businesses and they're addicted to, you name it, or, aren't happy in their lives and their marriages, I'm doing pretty good. And I should be able to do this then. Like, what's my excuse? Yeah, it's true. It's really interesting. Why do you think you were pulled towards real estate versus any other type of investing? Because there's other opportunities out there. Was it that idea of beautifying something, creating something, giving people that American dream, if you will? What was that?
Yeah, I think it's a number of things. I think one of them was literally the fact that I grew up, watching HGTV, watching This Old House, seeing like these really terrible looking buildings turned into something beautiful. Yeah. And then also that combined with the idea that it's something that everybody needs. I love taking things that are rough in shape and making them amazing. I love being able to take and make something awesome. And it was just fun. Like, it was just kind of a fun thing. And it just was a thing that was in front of me, because originally it was tech startups, and tech startups are great and people are full of dreamers, but that whole model is built on don't make any money or revenue, just fund the thing and hope to get enough users. And then hopefully somebody else will acquire you. And this was a business that, you could start without a lot, The entry point was fairly simple. Now, most people are not building the business that I was building, but when I took those two components together and I just saw the possibility of what was there. I had already, I'd never owned a property in my life before I had bought 75 houses. It was probably house 100 or so when I bought my own personal home.
Oh, really? Okay. So you didn't even start with your own personal.
I didn't even have a personal home. And
Wow.
before that, when I was starting these other businesses, I had essentially self-funded, bootstrapped everything by running Airbnbs back in 2014, way before it was a thing.
Wow.
I went on vacation. I met this beautiful woman. She lived in another city, and I decided to throw my house on Airbnb to go visit her for a weekend. And I got paid to go and hang out with this beautiful woman. And I came back and I was like, oh snap. Like this is it. I went and got 2 more buildings. I didn't own them. I rented them, but I was essentially 4Xing my rent money on average, sometimes 7Xing. And it was simple. And so that was like, I never considered it real estate until years later. It was just another hustle. And I'd always done a lot of hustles.
Yeah.
But then when you kind of put those pieces together, it's like, oh man, like anybody can really do it. And I don't really recommend everybody goes out and starts to be an operator because, it took me 3 years of flipping 200 houses before I realized, wow, this is a new job. I'm getting paid a lot of money, but it's a job. And then I got into private equity and we buy large multifamilies. We run a debt fund. We've got some other investment strategies out there. Again, bigger asset, better returns, actually easier to manage, but another job. But the thing I like about the phase that we're in is that it's all about partnership. In the single family space, it's sending 100,000 mailers a month. We're doing all kinds of crazy marketing stuff.
Yeah.
But it was super transactional. We'd buy somebody's house and somebody doesn't sell their house for 70 cents on their dollar twice. And they weren't high level thinkers. They weren't thinking from this place of like, how do I create a great life? They were in survival. And so I was like, the next iteration needs to be surrounded by people who have a higher level of thinking, are thinking about creating a great life, and we can create a 20-year relationship. So that was kind of the next evolution. And that's really what we do today is we teach and train people how to think like an investor, how to invest in private equity. And then whether they do it with us or they do it with somebody else, they can actually go out and kind of create that life that they want to create. And then of course we run our own funds. And so a lot of people end up partnering with us because, we're really focused on that relationship. And, a lot of people aren't.
What is the thing that you find, especially nowadays, that is preventing the mindset from thinking more abundantly and thinking like beyond just the sale of this house or whatever? Because there are people who I'm sure listening to this that, they're busy, they're running a business. Most of them are some sort of private practice owner. They've got multiple other people that they're thinking about and caring about to making sure those paychecks get paid. But when it comes to that next level, it's hard for them to see. It's hard for them to think bigger than where they are right now. What do you think is the biggest limiting belief that you see happen?
I think the biggest limiting belief that everyone experiences in every way and in every chapter of their life is that most people, you're comfortable where you're at. You're comfortable with what you know. It's because it's what's right in front of you. It's what you've already done a number of times. If you invest in the stock market, you're doing it because your grandfather did it and your financial advisor did it and all of your buddies did it. And when you look at doing something new, you're like, oh, well, this is scary because I don't know that much about it. But that doesn't mean it's not good. Just like if you're a chiropractor at the beginning and you had never done it before, you went to school, you learned a skill, and then you were able to go out and practice that skill. And now you look back and you think, oh, hey, I'm really good at this. This is what I do now. And so when it comes towards becoming an investor, even if you're really busy, even if you've got the family, all of those things, there's really only 2 or 3 steps that you need to follow to actually start getting involved in these things. And to simplify it down, it's you got to gain the skills and knowledge and experience. So you got to start understanding what is it that we're talking about when it comes to investing. What's the upside? What's the downside? How do I find a good opportunity? Who are the good people who have opportunities? How do I find the right partners? you got to then find, using that skills and knowledge, you got to find the right advisors, the right experts. And to put that clearly, that's people like attorneys and CPAs and investment advisors and operators and coaches and mentors, the people who can guide you to say, nope, this is a really good deal for what you want, and you should get involved. And then third is to do it. And maybe you start off small. Maybe if you're just doing a $50,000 investment or $100,000 investment, you're not putting all your eggs in, you get comfortable, you start getting that experience. And just like everything else, you start to get to a point where you're like, wow, this works out. But if you only do one investment, it doesn't work out, you're going to be in a position where you're going to think, man, this doesn't work for me. So it's always better to start first, gain the skills and knowledge, get the mentors, and then work from a plan so that you've got a diversified portfolio of things that kind of go together. And if you're new to it, you're thinking, well, man, that sounds complicated. And at first it's going to seem like that, but it's pretty simple. And then once you start wrapping your head around that stuff, you can start to feel the benefit of what that is.
Well, it seems like it could be complicated if you don't do what you said just 60 seconds ago, which is finding the right people to help you get there. It's way more difficult when you're trying to do it on your own.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think a lot of people, myself included, we get to this place of like, you know what, I can just figure it out. I'll just do it. And it's like, man, so much easier to shorten that pathway when you actually have the right people. I know that one of the things when I was reading through your bio and stuff that you really like understand because you studied the principles of success, right? And what entrepreneurs do, business leaders, investors, in order to hit that level of success. Are there any specific like areas where you've discovered the majority of people focus on X or Y versus what kind of the general population does? Hey, there's no reason to learn how to own your role on your own. If you like that clip, go ahead and click right here for another one. Or if you want to watch the entire podcast, go ahead and click right here. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.